Ryan sat on the edge of his bed early in the morning, resting his elbows on his knees and staring at the partly open closet. Soft rays of sunrise slipped through the blinds, illuminating the array of sewing needles, colorful threads, and bits of fabric strewn about his desk. His bedroom looked like a makeshift workshop, with sketches pinned to corkboards and reference images taped to the walls. Over the past few months, he had poured every ounce of dedication into creating a costume that, until now, he had only dreamed about. Today was the big day, his chance to wear that outfit in front of a crowd at one of the biggest anime conventions in the country. He was 22 years old and had been sewing since his teenage years, initially out of pure fascination with how clothes came together. Over time, that interest evolved into a talent for crafting entire costumes. His heart, however, was pounding furiously this morning. Despite his skill with a needle and thread, he was burdened by nerves. He tugged at the sleeve of his t-shirt, mustering the courage to gather up the completed pieces of the costume and gently place them in a large garment bag. Then he put on a baggy hoodie, slipped into old jeans, and laced up his sneakers, ready to head out the door. On the way downstairs, he nearly tripped on a stray spool of thread that had rolled off his desk the night before. Scooping it up, he stuffed it into his pocket with a wry grin. Outside in the driveway, his older sister Beth was already waiting in her car, sipping coffee from a paper cup. She was only 2 years older than Ryan, but had a knack for exuding a protective presence when it came to her younger brother's ventures. "You sure you have everything?" Beth asked as he climbed in, setting the garment bag carefully in the back seat. She tilted her head toward the bag, then cast an inquisitive glance at her brother. "Wig, accessories, props. Did you double-check?" Ryan nodded, cheeks flushing slightly. "I must have triple-checked," he said, his voice a little raspy from waking up early. "If I leave anything behind, I'll probably freak out." Beth patted his shoulder as she set the car in motion. "You'll do fine. You've worked so hard on this." He wanted to say something more reassuring, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he took a deep breath and recalled how this cosplay idea had begun. He had stumbled upon this particular anime one lazy weekend, drawn to its dazzling costumes and over-the-top characters. One especially fierce female warrior had caught his eye with her elaborate armor and regal flowing robes. For most fans, cosplaying as that character would have been an aspiration. But Ryan had actually decided to do it. The cross-dressing aspect, though unusual to some, felt like the perfect way to challenge his creativity. He didn't consider it strange. He saw it as a creative outlet, a chance to slip into a role that stood in stark contrast to his everyday, soft-spoken personality. The convention center soon loomed ahead, a large structure with big banners advertising the event. From the parking lot, a sea of cosplayers in vivid wigs and costumes bustled around. The excitement in the air was hard to miss. Ryan's hands started to tremble as he reached into the back seat to retrieve the garment bag. He said a quiet goodbye to Beth, who promised to find him later in the main hall. She had no interest in anime herself, but she was wholeheartedly supportive of her brother's enthusiasm. As Ryan made his way through the crowds, weaving between groups dressed as knights, futuristic robots, and gothic Lolita characters, he couldn't help feeling a jolt of pride. Cosplay had brought him a sense of participation in a vibrant community, and that feeling was exhilarating. He found the dressing room tucked at the back of the massive exhibition space, far from the vendors selling imported figurines and the bustling halls where fans snapped photos. The backstage room had mirrors lining an entire wall and was crammed with cosplayers prepping for the day's contest. Some adjusted tiny details of their attire, others fussed with makeup or coiffed elaborate wigs. Ryan picked a corner and carefully unzipped the garment bag. Methodically, he assembled each piece of the costume. First came the fitted undersuit he had stitched from a lightweight, flexible fabric. He slipped it on, feeling it tighten around his figure, but not uncomfortably so. Next came the layered skirts, delicate floating panels of shimmering cloth that fanned around his legs. It took him forever to perfect the color scheme so that it matched the character's appearance exactly. Pale blues and deep purples that swirled together like stormy skies in the show. He paused to admire his handiwork, running his fingers along the seams. Then he donned the chest armor, crafted from lightweight foam carefully shaped with heat, then painted and weathered for a realistic metallic look. Decorative gems shimmered from the shoulders. With every piece he put on, it felt as if he were stepping further away from his usual self. Finally, he put on the wig. He had spent days styling it. The character sported long, flowing hair that cascaded in waves down her back. While he had worn wigs before, this one felt particularly special. He secured it carefully, using pins to keep it snug. By the time he looked in the mirror, a blush of excitement and nerves warmed his cheeks. Gone was the shy young man in a hoodie. Instead, he saw someone powerful, regal, a bold figure he had summoned from hours of painstaking craft. Ryan's eyes flicked to the others in the dressing room. Conversations intertwined in the background, but he barely registered them. The reflection felt surreal. A faint trembling in his chest told him that, despite the jitters, he was ready. He made his way out into the corridor, where a staff member gathered all the cosplay competition participants. They led them toward the small stage area. The competition would be an all-day affair. Morning was for costume judging, and then the finalists would move on to the performance segment in the evening. Ryan took his place in line, adjusting a strap on his shoulder. Nearby, he noticed a tall woman dressed as a samurai. Her hair was braided, and her armor gleamed under the overhead lights. She caught Ryan's eye and offered a friendly grin. "Your costume is incredible," she said, eyes shining with admiration. "I love the detail on the shoulder plates." "Thanks," Ryan replied softly, a bit taken aback by her warmth. I worked on it for months." She held out her hand. "I'm Tessa." After a quick handshake, he gave his name. "Ryan." Then, with a slight laugh, he admitted, "But I guess I'm not exactly looking like a Ryan right now." Tessa shook her head. "Hey, it's all good. That's the fun of cosplay. You really embody the character." She paused. "Sorry if I'm staring. I just love great craftsmanship, you know?" Ryan felt a swell of pride. "I appreciate it," he said. Though fear still lurked in the back of his mind, moments like these reminded him he was in the right place. Soon they were ushered onto the judging platform, where a panel of experienced cosplayers and costume designers evaluated each participant. Ryan noticed cameras flashing from every angle, capturing images for the convention's social media. The judges asked him questions about the design process, the fabric choices, the foam armor. His knees shook a bit as he spoke into the microphone, but wearing the character's attire steadied him somehow. He managed to explain each step of his project without fumbling over his words as much as he usually would. He could almost taste the burst of adrenaline that came from presenting something he had crafted with such focus. When the judges finished, he stepped off the platform and exhaled in relief. Tessa caught up with him just behind the curtain. "You did great," she praised. "Your attention to detail stands out." He tried to respond casually, but enthusiasm spilled from his voice. "Thanks, I was so nervous. You seemed relaxed up there, though." She shrugged. "Not exactly relaxed, but it's my third year competing. You get used to it." They exchanged small talk about how they got into cosplaying, how friends had encouraged them, or how they found ways to balance work, studies, and their hobby. The easy conversation made the crowded corridor feel a bit less intimidating. Throughout the morning and early afternoon, Ryan wandered around the convention, snapping pictures with other cosplayers and fans who recognized his character. Some asked to take photos together, while others complimented him on capturing the character's bold facial expressions. His face ached from smiling for cameras, but that ache felt gratifying. Occasionally, he caught his reflection in glass display cases or in other people's phones. Each time, the image both thrilled and startled him. The costume made him appear confident, almost radiant. He was used to blending into the background, or at most, being recognized for behind-the-scenes costuming tips. But walking around in these robes, with a wig that swayed every time he turned his head, he found a kind of freedom he rarely felt in his everyday life. That said, he also felt a certain vulnerability. At one point, he went to grab a snack from a vendor and heard a few curious whispers behind him. Two onlookers commented, "Is that a guy?" in hushed voices. He felt his cheeks grow hot, fighting a surge of embarrassment. Still, the moment passed quickly. Another cosplayer, a man wearing an elaborate cloak, stepped in and complimented Ryan's craftsmanship. The swirl of the convention's energy swept away the anxiety. Late in the afternoon, an announcement boomed over the loudspeakers. Would all cosplay competition participants check the info desk for the finalists list? The finals will be held on the main stage at 6 p.m. Thank you. He glimpsed a few cosplayers scrambling excitedly. Heart hammering, he made his way through the masses. Nervous anticipation filled him as he scrolled down the posted list. Tessa's name was there, near the top, along with a handful of others. Scanning lower, he spotted his own name, Ryan Martinez, character, Lady Astrida. His chest tightened. He had made it to the finals. Adrenaline surged through him, intensifying the flutter in his stomach. He let out a small, nervous laugh, almost disbelieving. To his left, Tessa squealed in delight, giving Ryan a light tap on the shoulder. "We both got in," she said, beaming. Ryan nodded, still processing. "That's fantastic," he managed. For a moment, he stood there in stunned silence until the staff repeated that the finalists had to report backstage in 20 minutes for a final briefing on the performance segment. He hurried off to meet them. Behind the stage, a staff coordinator explained that each finalist would have about 3 minutes to present a short skit or performance in character. The guidelines were flexible, but the judges would be looking at how well they captured the essence of the character beyond the costume itself. The coordinator handed Ryan a small slip of paper with a time slot. He peered at it, feeling sweat gather at his temples. Performing in front of an audience was worlds away from quietly answering a few questions for the judges. Memorizing lines or doing a routine in front of so many people felt daunting. When the coordinator finished, Ryan tried to steady his breathing, reviewing possible ideas for his performance. The character he had chosen was a warrior noblewoman who delivered grand monologues and displayed a proud, confident attitude. Could he pull that off in a short skit? He thought about reciting a short scene from the show. He knew one of her speeches by heart, the one she gave before charging into a decisive battle. But reenacting it in front of a live audience? His nerves twisted into knots at the thought. Finding a free spot backstage, he laid out his plan in a small notebook he had tucked into his bag. As he scribbled a few lines of dialogue, Tessa stepped in. She noticed his anxious expression. "Nervous?" she asked. He nodded. "I'm terrified. I'm not exactly a performer." She glanced at his writing. "I'm doing a small choreographed fight scene with a friend. That helps break up the pressure of talking. If it makes you feel better, maybe you can incorporate a short fight stance or some dramatic moves." Ryan tapped his pen against the notebook, considering it. "I was thinking of a short monologue that's a highlight of the character's big moment." "That can work," Tessa assured him. "The more dramatic, the better, right? This character is known for her flair." He swallowed. "Right. It's the acting part that worries me. But I guess I can try to channel her energy." She encouraged him with a reassuring smile. "That's the spirit." The next hour passed in a blur. He rehearsed his lines quietly, pacing in a small corridor behind the stage as other finalists crowded around to practice. He tried to remember the authoritative tilt of his character's head, the proud extension of her shoulders, although he had never considered himself an actor. The months he'd spent studying this character helped him tap into something. The costume no longer felt like a separate entity. Each piece reminded him of the determination his character was known for. Finally, the staff announced that the final competition was about to begin. The main hall was packed with attendees crammed into rows of chairs, with more onlookers standing against the walls. Powerful spotlights illuminated the center stage. Judges sat at a long table. Ryan's heart pounded so loud that it felt deafening. One by one, the finalists performed. Tessa did a dynamic routine with a partner, mock sword fighting in perfect synchronicity. The crowd cheered for her fluid movements, the clash of prop blades echoing off the walls. Another cosplayer performed a comedic sketch that had the audience roaring. Then came a series of dramatic monologues. Ryan's slot was near the end, which only made his anticipation more nerve-wracking. Backstage, he paced and tried out last-minute gestures, repeating lines under his breath. When the staff gave him the signal, he inhaled sharply, forced his posture upright, and stepped onto the stage. A hush spread through the hall as he walked to the center, his robes shimmering under the bright lights. He tried to block out the sea of eyes staring at him. Instead, he called upon the confidence of his character. He raised one hand as if gripping the hilt of an invisible weapon and spoke the opening lines of Lady Astrida's famous declaration. His voice wavered at first, but as he kept going, he found a surge of energy he didn't know he had. His voice rang out, steady and clear. He offered the crowd regal glances and swept the other arm across his chest in dramatic fashion. Each sentence reverberated with a sense of power, even if his heart was hammering beneath the armor. He made sure to project as much expression as possible into each word, recalling precisely the theatrical cadence from the anime. When he finished, applause erupted around the room. He bowed, a graceful theatrical bow that he'd practiced in the mirror. Then he left the stage, trembling with a mix of relief and euphoria. Behind the curtains, he let out a shuddering breath. Tessa was waiting, along with some of the other finalists, offering a wave of congratulations. "You nailed it," she whispered, giving him a gentle high five. "That was intense." He looked at her, still breathless. "I'm just glad I didn't freeze out there." They shared a quick laugh. The rest of the final performances continued, culminating in a showcase of the extraordinary talent in the cosplay community. When the last participant left the stage, the host beckoned everyone back on stage to await the results. Ryan stood in a line of nervous finalists. The host took the microphone, building suspense by praising everyone's costumes and performances before reading the top 3. Ryan's stomach churned as names were announced. Third place went to an elaborate mecha cosplayer, second place to Tessa and her partner for their fight choreography. Ryan stifled a pang of disappointment, assuming he'd missed out, but then the host read first place, Ryan Martinez as Lady Astrida. For an instant, Ryan's mind went blank. He only realized he was moving forward when the audience's cheers filtered in. The judges handed him a trophy, along with a small envelope of prize money and a certificate. In that surreal moment, time seemed to slow. The applause enveloped him like a warm wave. He tried to say a few words of thanks into the microphone, voice shaky, but he forced out a sentence or two. As the applause continued, he lifted his trophy, a grin stretching across his face. The bright lights blurred, but he blinked back tears, determined to keep it together on stage. As soon as they left the stage, Tessa threw her arms around him in a congratulatory hug. He clutched the trophy, speechless. I didn't. This is crazy, he stammered. Tessa laughed. Not crazy. You earned it. Your costume is top-notch, and that performance? It gave me chills. The rest of that evening passed in a dizzying haze of celebration. People asked to take pictures with him and lined up to get a close look at his craftsmanship. He gave a few interviews to small-time content creators roaming the convention. He couldn't quite process that he'd gone from terrified competitor to the star of the show. Beth rushed over at one point, phone raised high to capture her brother in all his costumed glory. She was practically bouncing with excitement, teasing him about how their parents would react when they saw pictures. Eventually, Ryan found himself outside the convention center, gulping in fresh evening air. The sun had set, the warm glow of streetlights reflected on the glass walls. He stood off to the side with Tessa, trophy at his feet, while other convention-goers still streamed in and out of the building. "So what's next for you?" she asked, leaning against a railing. He shrugged, voice still filled with a tinge of disbelief. "I'm not sure. I didn't think I'd win. Now people are asking if I have social media or if I'll do more elaborate cosplays. Honestly, it's a lot to take in." "You absolutely should set up an account for your cosplay. People love following someone with genuine skill," Tessa said. "Trust me, the community will appreciate whatever you share." He breathed a small laugh. "Yeah, I guess I should. It might be fun to connect with other cosplayers." Tessa nodded, glancing at the trophy. "You might be in high demand. Don't underestimate how quickly fans can gather around someone who steps onto that stage like you did." They said their goodbyes after exchanging phone numbers. Beth found him minutes later. Together they walked to the car, the trophy cradled carefully in Ryan's arms. He felt exhausted, but an excited exhaustion that came from exceeding all his own expectations. Later that night, back home, Ryan stood in front of his bedroom mirror, still partially in costume. He couldn't resist looking at it one more time. He removed the wig carefully, setting it on a stand. The transformation was only half reversed. The character's vibrant makeup still highlighted his eyes, and the chest armor glinted in the light. Beneath it, he could feel how his heart was still fluttering from all the excitement. He felt different. The person he'd been on stage had seemed fierce, commanding, poised. Even though he was back in his own room now, he sensed that he carried some of that aura with him. No one was around to see his shy grin in the mirror, but that grin radiated the same energy he had unleashed before the crowd. The next day, tired as he was, he decided to create a cosplay-focused account on a popular social media platform. He uploaded a few snapshots from the convention, including a behind-the-scenes shot of him working on the foam armor and another taken on the big stage with the trophy. Within hours, he saw the numbers tick upward. Messages poured in, people praising the craftsmanship, curious about how he'd constructed certain pieces, and congratulating him on the well-deserved first place. At first, he tried to reply to every message, but as the comments stacked up, it became clear that this was no small trickle of support. It was an entire wave of encouragement and interest. He realized that, although he had been shy his whole life, he did like connecting with people when it came to this shared passion. A week or so later, Tessa invited him to a local cosplay meetup. It was held in a park, far less formal than a big convention, but perfect for getting to know others in the community. The moment Ryan stepped out of his car, garment bag in hand, he noticed that same familiarity that had first welcomed him at the convention. People mingled in casual cosplays, some playing group games, others taking photos near the pond. Ryan found a corner to slip into his Lady Estrida attire once more. This time, the transformation happened smoothly, like slipping into a persona that he now understood deeply. Not everyone recognized the character by name, but they recognized the level of craftsmanship. A cluster of new faces approached him, curious and warm. In a short span, he was talking about fabric choices, foam armor techniques, and anime recommendations. Amid that chatty circle, a quiet yet enthusiastic individual named Greg perked up. He wore a cosplay of an obscure side character from the same anime series. "I've never seen anyone attempt Lady Astrida before," he said, his eyes shining. "That show is kind of under the radar. What made you pick her?" Ryan paused. The question took him back to the hours he'd spent binge-watching the series. "I liked her complexity," he said. "She always stands her ground. The show portrays her as poised, but her confidence also covers up a lot of insecurities she tries to hide. I connected with that." Greg nodded. "I totally see that. And it's amazing how you captured all the details of her outfit." He gestured to the layered skirts and the intricately weathered armor. That sense of camaraderie was something Ryan found himself craving more and more. The meetup turned into a full day of cosplay tips, group photos, and friendly banter. At the end, a small group decided to grab dinner, and Ryan was delighted to be included. Over bowls of ramen in a brightly lit restaurant near the park, laughter and conversation flowed freely. Tessa teased him about how the judges at the next big convention would have their eyes peeled for him. Greg asked about his plans for future cosplays. Others chimed in with suggestions or requests that he tackle certain iconic characters. Ryan found that social gatherings like this were easier to handle when he felt connected to a supportive community. His usual hesitations melted when the talk revolved around a shared passion for crafting, watching anime, or designing outfits. Even in street clothes, minus the wig and the dramatic makeup, he discovered that the gusto he'd shown on stage wasn't entirely gone. A few weeks passed, and Ryan's online following continued to grow steadily. People asked him to post video tutorials on foam shaping or fabric painting. Though he was intimidated by the idea of filming himself, Tessa coaxed him into trying. "You've already performed in front of a massive crowd," she pointed out. "Talking to a camera is the easy part." So he started small, filming short clips explaining how to seal foam properly, or which primer worked best before painting. He let his face appear in some of the footage, albeit more timidly than in costume. Yet the support and curiosity from viewers spurred him to keep going. Soon enough, he discovered that being open about his process felt fulfilling. It reminded him of how he'd once learned from others, watching tutorials as a teenager, eager to improve his sewing and prop-making skills. Meanwhile, Beth teased him at home about his sudden popularity. "Are you going to start doing autograph signings?" she joked one evening, poking her head into his room where he was sketching possible designs for a new costume. He rolled his eyes playfully. "It's not like I'm a celebrity," he protested. She leaned against the doorway. "But you are making a name for yourself, you know, and not just for the costume. People seem to like you, the person behind it." He looked down at his sketches, a faint blush creeping over his cheeks. "I guess so. I never expected that." She sauntered over, ruffled his hair gently. "You should be proud. You've always been talented. It's cool to see you share that with the world." He gave her a thankful smile, then got back to his designing. He was planning a variant of Lady Astrida's costume from a later episode in the series, where the character wore a more powerful, royal-looking outfit. Ryan's vision was to add more elaborate accessories, golden filigree, inlaid gems, a dramatic new wig style. He started to gather materials online, ordering different fabrics and specialized decorative pieces. During that time, his messages with Tessa became a near-daily occurrence. They chatted about everyday life, not just cosplay, sharing memes or discussing their jobs. She worked at a local museum gift shop, while he juggled a part-time job in a printing store. Their schedules frequently aligned enough to arrange little meetups to test out new costume ideas or pick up crafting supplies together. One afternoon, while they were rummaging through bolts of fabric in a store, Tessa broached a tricky subject. "So, are you ever worried about how people might react?" she asked casually, keeping her tone light but inquisitive. "I mean, specifically about cross-dressing as a female character. Not everyone's open-minded." Ryan paused, running a hand over a sample of shimmering satin. A faint flicker of apprehension crossed his eyes, but he shrugged. "Sometimes, yeah," he admitted. "I've definitely had some looks, or whispers here and there. But I guess I don't let it stop me. Once I'm in costume, it feels right for me." She nodded, offering a gentle smile. "I'm glad, because you really shine in that role." That sentiment stayed with Ryan. He reflected on how wearing Lady Estrida's costume had brought out parts of himself he rarely allowed to surface in everyday life. He realized it wasn't just about a hobby, it was a chance to step out of his shell. It had already led him to so many new friendships and experiences, and he cherished that. By the time the next major convention came around, Ryan was more than prepared. He had refined his original design and added the new variant. Tessa, Greg, and several others decided to form a small group cosplay from the same series. Ryan's popularity had soared enough that he found himself approached to join panels discussing costume creation. The idea thrilled and terrified him in equal measure. Nevertheless, he ended up agreeing to be part of a panel titled "Building Armor and Confidence in Cosplay." The panel was set in one of the convention's medium-sized rooms, accommodating around 100 attendees. Alongside him were 3 other cosplayers, each specializing in different aspects. One in makeup, one in massive prop weaponry, and Tessa representing experience in group choreography. When Ryan walked into the panel room wearing his Lady Estrida outfit, the new, regal version, he saw more people than he'd expected. Rows of chairs were mostly filled. Cameras perched on tripods, presumably to record for online coverage. Spotlights illuminated a table where 4 microphones stood. Ryan's stomach fluttered with nerves. Yet at the same time, he felt a surge of excitement. Dressed as Lady Estrida, with foam pauldrons shaped like stylized wings, a high collar gleaming with gold trim, and a shining tiara-like headpiece, he felt unstoppable. The panel began. They introduced themselves, and Ryan's turn came to speak. He explained how he'd been cosplaying for years, but only recently dared to enter competitions. He mentioned his background in sewing, how he'd self-taught through online resources, and how helpful the community had been. Occasionally, the audience erupted in applause or laughter, especially when he recounted comedic mishaps like sewing a sleeve on backward or melting foam pieces with a heat gun set too high. When it was time for audience questions, a young man raised his hand. "Ryan, what gave you the confidence to dress as a female character? Did you worry you wouldn't be taken seriously?" Ryan leaned into the microphone. "Yeah, it was a concern at first, but I think in this community we celebrate creativity and skill above all else. If you're passionate about a character and want to bring them to life, that's what matters." He paused, trying to phrase his thoughts carefully. "I found that once people saw the work and care I put into every detail, they respected the dedication. Wearing this costume helped me embrace being more outgoing, and I'm grateful for that." The crowd applauded, and Tessa shot him a proud grin from her seat. More questions followed, ranging from foam templates to complexities of painting techniques. Ryan even gave a quick demonstration of how he used stencils to create symmetrical patterns on the armor. The hour whirled by. After the panel ended, a small line of people waited to talk to him. Some wanted specific tips. Others simply wanted to express appreciation or take a photo together. That interaction fueled an even greater drive in Ryan to continue developing his craft. Over the following months, he balanced work, online tutorials, and cosplaying at smaller events. He branched out, trying other characters, both male and female, but Lady Astrida remained his signature portrayal. His online follower count rose steadily. He rarely showed his face in day-to-day clothes on camera, but he allowed glimpses now and then, especially when filming technique demonstrations from his room. One memorable evening, he received a direct message from a professional costume designer who worked with a local theater group. The designer congratulated him on his achievements and asked if he'd ever consider doing freelance commission work or collaborating on productions. Ryan's jaw dropped. He'd never dreamed that his casual passion might lead to professional opportunities. He typed a polite response expressing interest, all the while shaking with excitement. In the midst of these developments, Tessa organized another group meetup, this time with a more ambitious goal: filming a short fan video for the anime they all loved. She recruited cosplayers from the same series, wrote a simple script, and arranged a day to shoot scenes in a large public garden. Ryan agreed to reprise Lady Astrida as the leader of the group for this miniature production. Greg joined, playing a stoic bodyguard character, while Tessa portrayed the sword-wielding samurai. Others filled in side characters, each bringing their own unique spin on them. The shoot took all day, from dawn until the sun started dipping below the horizon. Everyone brought their own cameras and lights, propping them up along stone pathways, near clusters of blooming flowers, and by marble statues. Despite the constraints of a casual fan film, the group poured their hearts into it. Ryan filmed an elaborate speech scene, delivering lines adapted from the show's script. Tessa added choreographed fight moves. It was exhausting, but exhilarating. Between takes, they shared laughter and snacks, adjusting costumes when the wind messed up someone's wig or the sun caused glares on the lenses. By the end of the filming session, as they gathered for a final group photo, Ryan felt a deep kinship with his fellow cosplayers. They had all bonded over their passion for bringing fictional characters to life, and that connection was reflected in their supportive attitudes toward one another. When Tessa took the last group shot, Ryan found himself standing near the center, his Lady Astrida armor reflecting the final rays of sunlight. He couldn't help smiling from ear to ear. It took a few weeks for Tessa to edit the footage, but when the fan video finally appeared online, it garnered enthusiastic responses, garnering thousands of views within days. Ryan's portrayal of Lady Astrida became a highlight in the comment section. Fans lauded him for capturing the regality and fierce determination of the character. Some even wrote about how inspiring it was to see him step into a character far removed from his everyday demeanor, remarking on how it illustrated the creative freedom cosplay provided. Reading those comments late into the night, Ryan felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. It reminded him of why he had first fallen in love with the idea of transforming himself into someone else, especially a persona so bold and dramatic. Outside the realm of cosplay, Ryan's personal life also began to shift. He found himself more at ease talking with colleagues and acquaintances. He no longer shrank from conversations or worried so much about embarrassing himself. Sure, he was still a little hesitant at times, but memories of standing on a stage or speaking in panels or filming group scenes by a garden fountain all fueled a newfound sense of security. He kept much of the grandeur for his cosplays, but a glimmer of that bravado colored his everyday interactions. Even Beth noticed the change. "You're actually volunteering opinions at the dinner table now," she teased one night. "Who are you, and what have you done with my brother?" He laughed, realizing she was only half joking. A few months ago, he would have remained quiet, but now he was discussing future costume ideas openly and telling their parents funny anecdotes about filming the fan video. They were happy to see him so excited and engaged. albeit a little puzzled by the complexities of foam armor and wig styling. Time continued in a steady flow of creative pursuits. More conventions popped up, more meetups were organized, and Ryan steadily increased his involvement in local cosplay circles. Offers to collaborate or judge smaller contests started rolling in. He was careful not to overextend himself, but he cherished each opportunity to connect with others who shared his enthusiasm. One highlight came when he was invited to be a guest judge at a small local anime event. Tessa joined him, also acting as a guest judge. The two took to the role naturally, encouraging participants and asking about their design choices. Ryan remembered how nerve-wracking it had been to stand before a panel when he first started out. He did his best to offer constructive advice in the kindest way possible. After they announced the winners, the host presented Ryan with a plaque commemorating his role as a judge. The crowd applauded politely, and he gave a short speech acknowledging the effort each participant had poured into their cosplays. That sense of coming full circle, going from competitor to mentor, moved him in ways he couldn't easily express. Back home, his social media continued to flourish, filled with both completed costumes and works in progress. It wasn't long before people recognized him at events. He'd arrive in costume, and someone would exclaim, "Hey, you're Ryan from online, right?" Then they'd mention how they followed his tutorials or found inspiration in how he overcame his stage fright. Though it felt surreal, he discovered genuine happiness in knowing that his journey resonated with people. His proudest moment, however, came unexpectedly. One evening, he was scrolling through his messages and found a personal note from a young cosplayer who recounted how seeing Ryan in costume had encouraged them to try cross-playing a character they loved, despite worries about what others might say. "Knowing you rocked it on stage gave me the motivation to do it too," the message read. Ryan felt a rush of warmth. He typed a heartfelt reply, wishing them well, offering tips, and thanking them for sharing their story. In the months that followed, Ryan took every chance he could to refine his craft. He dabbled in more advanced sewing techniques, tested out new prop materials, and even explored basic electronics for LED lighting on some futuristic outfits. He sometimes took on private commission requests, designing costumes for those who didn't have the time or skills to do it themselves. Each completed piece was a testament to the imagination and resilience that cosplay could foster. Though it wasn't always a smooth path, he faced budget constraints, occasional mocking comments, stress balancing his job with his blossoming cosplay commitments. He found that the confidence unlocked by wearing Lady Astrida's costume remained a guiding force. The memory of standing on that stage the first time he truly owned his performance stayed fresh in his mind. One particular day, while he worked on a commission in his bedroom, Beth peeked in. "Oh, you're busy," she said quietly. "I'll come back later." Ryan lifted his gaze from the sewing machine. "It's okay. I could use a break. What's up?" She hesitated, then stepped closer, eyes surveying the half-finished garment on the table. "I was just thinking about how far you've come since that first competition. You're like a different person." He smiled softly. "Maybe not that different, but I guess I've grown more comfortable showing who I am." She crossed her arms, nodding. "I'm really proud of you. You know that, right?" His heart swelled. "Thanks. That means a lot." They spent a few minutes chatting about upcoming conventions. Beth wanted to visit the next one to see Ryan in action. She confessed she might even try a casual cosplay if time allowed. That notion delighted him, and he offered to help her choose a character and gather basic supplies. As the next major convention rolled around, Ryan debuted yet another elaboration on Lady Astrida's ensemble, this time combining elements from all the designs he'd crafted over the year. The outfit was breathtaking, merging the swirling layers of fabric from the original costume with the opulent gold trim and dramatic wig from the second design. He added new accessories, including a radiant staff he'd built using lightweight PVC pipe and carefully carved foam details. Small LED lights twinkled within the staff's headpiece, giving it a magical glow under the convention lights. When he stepped onto the convention floor, a mixture of hush and admiration spread among the onlookers. Cameras flashed, and people approached him within moments, complimenting the luminous staff and the regal manner in which he carried it. He was overwhelmed by gratitude and a sense of purpose. He recognized that what had begun as a quiet hobby had, in many ways, reshaped his entire life. Amid the dazzling chaos, Tessa found him, dressed in a matching outfit themed around the same series. They exchanged a gleeful hug. "You look incredible," she exclaimed, eyes sweeping over his new staff. "You really outdid yourself this time." He chuckled, lightly tapping the staff on the floor. "I had some free weekends to experiment with lighting." They wandered through the venue, reuniting with friends, making new ones, sharing in the excitement of each other's creative endeavors. At one point, they joined a huge photo shoot for fans of the anime series, everyone lined up in their costumes. Ryan stood front and center, staff gleaming, as dozens of cameras immortalized the moment. Later in the day, someone recognized Ryan's online handle and asked if he could sign a print of him in costume that they'd purchased from an artist alley vendor. He blinked in surprise. "You sure you want me to sign it?" he asked, uncertain. When they eagerly nodded, he took the pen and scribbled his name. The thought that people were collecting art of his cosplay felt surreal, but also wonderful. That evening, after hours of interacting with fans and posing for pictures, he slipped behind a quiet corner near the main hall, taking a moment to breathe. He pulled off the headpiece and felt the cool air on his forehead. Memories of his first time wearing Lady Estrida's outfit floated back. Back then, he had been so unsure, barely able to steady his legs as he approached the stage. Now, he was a recognized figure in this community, someone others looked to for guidance and inspiration. The shift was profound, yet oddly natural. Though he was still the same Ryan, the journey had given him the chance to explore corners of his personality that he'd kept hidden. He couldn't help reflecting on how a single contest had set in motion everything that followed. New friendships, online connections, group projects, a blossoming platform, and the courage to share his talents with the world. He reattached the headpiece, adjusted a displaced skirt panel, and set off back into the colorful crowd. Familiar faces greeted him along the way, and he welcomed them with genuine warmth. The night concluded with an unofficial after-party at a local cafe. Ryan joined Tessa, Greg, and a small group of friends, dragging chairs into a circle and sipping hot drinks. They were exhausted, but exhilarated. Laughter punctuated their conversation, and Ryan noticed the easy way he now moved between jokes and discussions without getting stuck in his own head. When the cafe lights dimmed, a hint for closing time, they said their goodnights and parted ways. Before leaving, Tessa nudged Ryan lightly. "You've really found your stride, haven't you?" she asked, voice tinged with admiration. He gave a short nod, thinking of everything that had led him there. "I guess you could say that. Wearing that costume gave me something I didn't know I was missing." Tessa smiled knowingly. "Keep going. We're all rooting for you." Outside, the sky was clear, the stars twinkling overhead. Ryan felt the pleasant ache in his muscles from a day spent on his feet, greeting fans and fellow enthusiasts. His costume glittered under the streetlights, and he clutched the staff like it was an extension of himself. He inhaled the cool night air, a sense of contentment washing over him. Gradually, he walked to the train station to head home. Sitting by the window on the late-night train, he watched the city lights blur past. In his mind, he pictured the next cosplay he would tackle, the next gathering he would attend, the next message he might receive from a fan online. He realized, not for the first time, that no matter how elaborate or simple the costume, stepping into it provided a kind of freedom he would never have believed possible in the past. Though the armor, wig, and makeup came off at the end of each day, the courage they stirred within him always lingered. He clutched his staff a little tighter, letting its soft glow illuminate his lap. The rhythmic clacking of the train lulled his thoughts. He smiled to himself, recalling the roar of the crowd at his very first competition, the bright stage lights, the jolt of surprise when he heard his name announced as the first-place winner. That memory still felt like lightning sparking through his veins. Even now, with the initial triumph behind him, it reminded him that sometimes the boldest endeavors led to the most heartfelt rewards. There, under the hum of fluorescent train lights, Ryan knew he would keep stitching, keep crafting, keep transforming, and most importantly, keep stepping forward with the confidence that had once felt so distant. He finally arrived at his stop, stepped onto the platform, and made his way home under a brilliant tapestry of stars. As he walked, the edges of his flowing robe brushed against the sidewalk, a gentle echo of the character's presence. Tomorrow he would carefully hang the costume, store the props, and unwind from the busy day. Yet the bravery he had worn on stage and in crowded convention halls would remain part of him. And that was enough to keep his spirit bright as he slipped into the quiet comfort of the night, looking ahead to whatever new adventures might await.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.